Genesis 3:15. Genesis 3:15 says, "And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel." Christians say that her seed is referring to Jesus. What does that really mean? How is this seed? How could it be referring to Jesus, or like as an individual, or as a people? I don't get it. Just please explain that whole process so that we as ex-Christians can explain it to others. Thank you.
So what's in view in Genesis chapter 3? The Nachash, the serpent, is able to persuade the woman to eat from an illicit tree that they're forbidden to eat from. The woman persuades her husband to do the same, Adam to do the same, and now God is turning to Adam and Eve and the serpent and telling them about their destiny. In Genesis 3, verse 15, Hashem is saying that, first of all, what was the serpent trying to do? He was trying to seduce the woman, trying to seduce her into following him rather than following God. That's how Genesis 3 begins. And so what the effort of the serpent was to tear or to in some way draw her to him and following him rather than the voice of God. So the Torah says, "Ve'eva oshes beincha uvein ha'isha," I will place enmity, hatred between you, meaning the serpent, and the woman, bein zaracha uvein zara, between your seed. And I'll just replace those pronouns. Your seed means the descendants of the serpent, uvein zara, and her seed mean the descendants of Eve. Okay? And then he will crush your head, and which means that the descendants of Eve will crush the head of a serpent. Now, just let's think about that for a moment. When you catch a snake, I wouldn't do it, and probably you wouldn't either. But if you ever wanted to catch a snake, how do you do it? What do you go after? You always go after its head. You grab it by the neck and you control the head. And how do you kill a snake? Don't step on its long body. What you want to do is you want to step on its head, and that crushes it. That delivers a fatal blow to the serpent. Conversely, the serpent will try to bite at the heel of mankind. So what was attempted, the reverse happens. Ultimately, there is a revulsion, a natural revulsion that people feel towards snakes. I remember as a kid, when we'd go to the zoo as part of a camp outing, and always the most intriguing place and the weirdest place in the zoo was always the what? The reptile house, right? It was very interesting to look at the lions and the bears and all that, for sure. But the reptile house was insane. And you're looking at these snakes behind thick glass. Well, at least you're hoping it's thick. And then there's some explanation of what kind of a snake is it and how venomous it is. And if it bit you, you would die within minutes or whatever, right? Black mamba, whatever. And you look at these creatures, I did at least, with horror. And I remember the thought going through my mind, and that is, I really hope that the glass that's between me and the snake didn't break for some reason, because I don't know what I would do. I really was. And I have a feeling that I'm not alone on that. It's just fascinating. It's disturbing. And it's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu put this in us, this sort of vile, we're disturbed by. When we look at tigers, I mean, if we had to be trapped in either a cage with a tiger or a cage with some sort of a venomous snake, a king cobra, we would, in a sense, maybe the tiger. The tiger would kill you in a second. You'd have a chance just staying away from the snake. So, but in a sense, tigers are very attractive. They're beautiful, they're powerful, and so on. Now, there's a little card trick here. You have to be very careful with this. It's like you walk down the streets of London and Manchester, New York, and Amsterdam, and see people playing 3-card Monte. They're trying to get your money. So there's a game that's being played. And Paul is going to play this game in the book of Galatians, in Galatians chapter 3. And that's the play on the word seed. So the word seed in Greek, that's where the word sperm comes from, and that's important here. The argument is made is that between your seed, meaning the serpent seed, and her seed, zara. So because the word zera presumably means seed as in sperm, as in the seed of a man, and a woman doesn't have sperm, she doesn't have seed, she only has an ovum. So therefore, this must be talking about some very special woman. This is how the card trick goes. This has to be speaking about some very special woman because she has a seed without a male. You got it? Like, how could a woman have a seed? So it has to therefore be referring to Mary and Jesus. And if this seems outrageous to you, if you're listening to me right now and going, that's completely insane, I want you to know that there are Christians who bang the table and say this is the best argument for Christianity in the world. And you're just scratching and go, I can't believe it. For right now, take my word for it. This is how the 3-card Monte goes down. So it's not correct. And I want to teach you something I don't think I've ever said here in the past. Whenever someone's trying to trick you theologically, what they do is they constrain a word to only one possible meaning, so that's called strawmanning it, and then they topple the straw man. That's almost always the case. They say, here's a word in Hebrew, it can only mean this. So in this case, the word is zara, right? So the word zara, they say, which means the woman's seed, can only mean sperm. That's how the Greek would go, meaning seed. A woman doesn't have seed. And therefore, this has to be speaking the virgin birth of Mary, because what other woman could have seed? You understand? This is how the scam goes down. But this is something I don't think I've ever shared with you. I think about it a lot, but it doesn't come up. The way these card tricks work, the sleight of hand works, is to take a Hebrew word, constrain it to only one possible meaning, and then you go for the neck, you go for the jugular. Paul does this a little differently in Galatians 3, where he says that the word seed is singular rather than plural, so it must be Jesus in early Genesis. That's just utter nonsense, because as it turns out, the word seed in Hebrew is very much like the word sheep in English. It's an irregular plural. So he exploits that word differently. But it's just not true. Seed, or zera, that's a common word. Although this construction, this third person singular feminine, it just doesn't come up in TaNaCh very much. But the root is all over the place. Can mean seed, as in the seed of a man, or it can mean a seed that you plant. Absolutely can mean that. Remember what I told you, how the sleight of hand works. But it just could mean offspring. And we have to look no further than 13 chapters later of Genesis 3. Turn, my friends, to Genesis chapter 16, verse 10. There, Hagar, the concubine of Abraham, is being told something special about her seed, right? About a nation that would come from her, and therefore she shouldn't be despondent. That's the context there. But what's most germane is there in Genesis 16, verse 10, which all Christians agree is a reference to the physical descendants of Hagar, who was a woman, right, is called Zerah, Zareh, your seed. So therefore, that's how the scam goes. Just so I don't leave you empty, like, what's going on here? So the man, his destiny is that he's going to have to, in order to make the soil give forth its fruit, he's going to have to work very hard, right? In order for the woman to have babies, to conceive, it's going to be with great difficulty. The serpent, on the other hand, is the opposite. Everything will be dust. How interesting. Everything is dust. That means food is everywhere. You see, the serpent never needs God. What is God doing with these? They're called curses, but they're not really curses. They're, in a sense, a destiny. If women, in order to conceive, need a lot of help, what does it force women to do? It forces women to turn to God, which Eve unfortunately didn't do in the very beginning of Genesis 3. She should have. If man is forced to work very hard, and only by the sweat of his brow will he bring forth fruit, what does that do to men? It forces them to turn to Hashem and to pray. See, it's not like this punishment goes on and on. It's not really a punishment. It's a blessing, because now we're always, Hashem is saying, talk to me, I love you. Talk to me. That's why Hashem makes us eat. Like, why can't we just get our nutrition by breathing? Because he wants to be close to us. He wants us to talk. The serpent, that damn serpent, I don't want to have a conversation with him. Everything will be dust and he will never need me. He's like Egypt that never needs God because it has a constant flow of the Nile River, doesn't need rain. Israel really does need rain, and it'll only get rain during the winter. So it's very beautiful what's happening in Genesis 3:15. But if you know the Hebrew language, really, you have intimacy with God. If you don't know Hebrew, you're very vulnerable to idolatry, and you certainly are doing, if you're reading the Bible in the English language, even if it's a good English translation, you're kissing God through a towel. You're missing the texture. It's like AM radio in black and white. You're just missing so much. Get to that Hebrew, get back to the original. Thank you so much for that thoughtful question.
If you enjoy this channel and the content, and it has changed your life, or perhaps the life of a loved one or a close friend, would you please consider supporting this work? You can click this link and it'll take you directly to my website with the donate button. Or there's a Patreon link and a mailing address for snail mail if you would prefer. If you do donate, please do me a favor and leave me a phone number where I can contact you and thank you properly. I hope you all have a wonderful 2025. Shalom.